Hi, and welcome to this screencast. Again, I apologize for not being able to be in class today, but I hope that you've all had a good Friday so far. And what we are going to do with this screencast here is that we're going to go over some notes that belong in Chapter 2, Section 1 and 2. I'll let you know when Section 2 starts if you want to label your notes that way. But we're going to continue discussing Mesopotamia a little bit here. And last time we talked a little bit about some of the basic conditions in Mesopotamia, the geography, some of the early political structures. And one of the things that you need to be aware of when it comes to Mesopotamia is that these people that lived here, the Sumerians, were the first ones to establish an empire. So they were the first ones to establish an empire. This is around 2300 BCE. And obviously at this point, the city-states as the basic political unit, that whole notion was gone. So that basically meant that around 2300 BCE, one of the city-states became so powerful that it took over all the other city-states and kind of consolidated that into one large empire. And the man that did that was a ruler called Sargon the First. So he consolidated all city-states into an empire. And basically how he did this was he just conquered them. He just conquered all the other city-states. So he was a very good military commander. And one of the things that made him such a good commander was that he came up with new ways of motivating his soldiers. So he came up with new ways of motivating his soldiers, and one of the more popular ways and one of the more powerful ways in which he motivated his soldiers was that he told them basically, if you go out and you fight for me, anything that you can steal, anything that you can loot, anything that you can take from the enemy, you get to keep it. Normally, that would all go back to the state and the state would kind of divide it up. But Sargon basically said, if you go out, you steal stuff, you take it, you rob people, you get to keep it. So the individual soldiers got to keep the loot they took. So as you can imagine, this made the soldiers very, very eager to go out and defeat the enemy and try to get as much stuff as possible, basically. The unfortunate thing with this is that this often led to very cruel behavior on behalf of Sargon's soldiers. They were often very, very cruel and often robbed people just for the sake of robbing them. There was really no need from a military standpoint to rob people, but the soldiers did so anyway. In any case, Sargon the First here is the first great military commander of ancient history and of history in general. And he created this very, very powerful army, largely by motivating his soldiers in a new fashion. So if we then look a little bit at the homework that you had for today, if we turn back to culture here, we can look at the reading that you had. That was the first book in history called the Epic of Gilgamesh. And I do know that the Epic of Gilgamesh can be a little bit difficult to understand. Hopefully it wasn't too tricky for you. Just to give you a little bit of a background about the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh was a very, very famous Sumerian ruler. And he actually did exist in reality, but the Epic of Gilgamesh is of course fiction. And the Epic of Gilgamesh is based on the idea that Gilgamesh Um, at one point, there was a goddess who became very, very attracted to Gilgamesh, and she wanted to marry Gilgamesh. So this goddess basically tells Gilgamesh, "Hey, I like you. You have to marry me." And Gilgamesh turns her down. Now, if there's one thing you don't want to do, you do not want to turn a goddess down, because the goddess got really, really mad and sent a bull to kill Gilgamesh. And of course, Gilgamesh, being the great person and great warrior that he is, killed the bull. So now this goddess is twice as mad as she was before. Not only had Gilgamesh rejected her, but he also killed the bull that she sent to kill him. So as revenge for Gilgamesh's behavior here, the goddess kills his best friend, a man named Enkidu. So Goddess kills his best friend, Enkidu. And you read an excerpt from the Epic of Gilgamesh in which Enkidu describes, he has this vision that he's going to die. And he tells Gilgamesh what is going to happen to him and what happens to everyone after one dies. And it's this very, very bleak vision of you go to this horrible place, you sit in darkness and you eat dirt, and it's just a horrible, horrible place to be. So Enkidu basically reveals the poor quality of the afterlife. So the poor quality of the afterlife. And what scholars think that this means is that the Sumerians were a very people that really appreciated life as it was happening, because they knew that once life is over, I'm going to this place that's really, really bad, so I might as well enjoy life while it's here. You know, the reason why we find this interesting is that oftentimes in Christianity, it's almost the opposite. A lot of the times people say, you know, my life was not great, I had a lot of hardships, etc., etc., but I've been a good and faithful Christian, and I know I will get rewarded in heaven. The Sumerians looked at that completely opposite. They said, enjoy life while it's here, try to make the best out of it, because once you're dead, things will get a lot worse. So that gives you just a little bit of an insight into the nature of the Sumerians. So if we're going to put a couple of notes up here, we'll just say that the Sumerians enjoyed life while they could, because the afterlife was so bad. Okay, so that's the end of section 1 here. And now we're going to turn to section 2, which deals with Egypt. And if we start with Egypt, just as we did with Mesopotamia, we're going to look at the geography of Egypt. And the first thing that stands out about the geography of Egypt is the River Nile. And I have a map here of the River Nile. It's the River Nile right here. And it's one of the longest rivers in the world. And it spans all the way from the Mediterranean Sea all the way down to Lake Victoria, over thousands of miles. This is a very, very long distance. This is a modern map here with modern countries, but the location of the river has obviously not changed since ancient times. So the River Nile is extremely important to the Egyptian history. So the Nile is extremely important to Egyptian history. And one of the things that we need to note here with the Nile is that whereas the Tigris and the Euphrates had suffered from irregular flooding, you never really knew when it was going to flood, how much it was going to flood. The flooding in the Nile, or the flooding of the Nile, was extremely regular and predictable. very predictable. Every every September rather, the Nile would flood, and it would stay for about 2 months, and then the flood would recede, and it would leave this incredibly nutritious soil. And I have a picture here. Again, this is modern day, but to just give you an idea, this is the Nile River right here, and you can see some of the flooded fields all around the river right here. This is how it would have looked. Of course, a little bit differently maybe in ancient times, but this is what the flooding looks like. And again, the soil is extremely fertile. I think I misspelled predictable there. Sorry about that. The soil is extremely fertile. It almost made farming almost automatic. You just kind of threw some seeds in the ground and it would just grow like crazy. This is one of the most fertile areas in the world here. So it made farming very, very easy. The other thing that you need to know about the Nile is that the Nile was a very calm river. It was very easy to travel on the Nile, which helped and improved communication. The Tigris and Euphrates, on the other hand, were kind of rocky waters. It was difficult to travel on them, which made it difficult for people to connect across the territories. The Nile, on the other hand, very calm, good for transportation. Good for transportation. The other thing that you need to know about the geography of Egypt is that the Nile was a huge kind of resource for the Egyptians. They not only got fertile soil from it, the Nile is was very rich when it came to fish. So it was really kind of the life giver of this region. Lastly, the other thing that Egypt has going for it is that they had a lot of natural resources. They have a great deal of natural resources. They had a lot of stone, which could be used for building. And they also had a lot of gold, which you obviously can use to trade. They even had a great deal of ivory, which was used for trade. So overall, from a geographical standpoint, Egypt is much, much better set up than Mesopotamia was. So Egypt had a lot of advantages compared to Mesopotamia. That's it for this screencast. I have a little assignment for you to do at the end of this screencast, and that assignment will be explained in the little box that's going to emerge at the end of this screencast. Again, if you have any questions about this screencast, do not hesitate to write those down and let me know on Monday. And I hope that you all have a great, great weekend.